Star Wars, Young Jedi Knights, Trouble on Cloud City.
Anna Galandro finished packing for the trip to Bespin in less than 5 minutes. Slinging her satchel of belongings over one shoulder, including a few special items she wanted no one to know about, she headed down the temple's ancient stone corridor toward the adjoining corridors occupied by the Solo twins. She reached up to tighten the leather headband that held her flowing hair in check, although just barely enough to keep it out of her face. Anna sighed at the thought of Jason and Jaina. Everyone in the Solo family seemed to have an effect on her life, and she found it both irritating and unnerving. First, Han Solo had murdered her father. Then Andre confronted him after a lifetime of planning the moment he had denied it, and somehow thwarted all of her attempts to get the revenge. Finally, telling herself that it would be the easiest way to hurt Han Solo, she had followed his children to Yavin 4, pretending to be their friend. She had believed that as she got to know the twins better, their true characters would emerge, and she would find ample reason and opportunity to inflict some sort of punishment on them. But that hadn't turned out as she expected either. Instead of proving heartless, self-centered, and prideful as she'd believed they would be, Jason, Jaina, and their friends at Jedi Academy had shown themselves to be helpful, patient, and honorable, even in the face of her most withering sarcasm. To make matters worse, Jason had turned out to have an endearing love for animals and a quirky, silly sense of humor Anja had found more and more pleasant as the days passed. She stamped her foot in annoyance outside the door to Jason's chambers, like Alice would do. How could this be happening? She wanted to hate these young Jedi Knights, wanted to find them despicable in every way. Their talk about trusting the Force was a bunch of nonsense. They were trying to change her with her talk of control and inner calm. So why didn't she despise them? Andre couldn't allow herself to become fond of these friends, she reminded herself. She needed to get revenge for their father, for the death of her father, the great Galandro. She would never allow herself to trust a Solo. They would probably show their true colors sometime soon. Perhaps if she tried goading them a bit more. Squaring her shoulders, Anja raised one fist to knock on Jason's door. But before she could do so, Jaina emerged from the next room over. I'm all ready for Cloud City. All ready for Cloud City, I see, Jaina observed. Me too. She patted a small duffel she carried. How about Jason? I was about to check, Anja replied in the cold voice she could muster. Isn't it obvious? Jaina's browny brown eyes blinked at Jaina's rudeness, but then she shrugged it off with a hesitant smile. I guess I should have figured that out, huh? Then she stepped forward, tapped once tightly on the door, and poked her head in without waiting for an answer. Andrew could see past Jaina into the room where the tousle-haired young woman stood in front of a wall filled with cages and aquariums. A ball of bright blue fluff sat on his shoulder. He turned around and waved his sister and Anja inside. His face lit with a quick smile. Hey, I'm almost done here. I was setting the timers on those now feeding and exercise monitors you designed. Jaina. Raynor said he'd look in on my menagerie just in case, and Uncle Luke offered to take care of Nikta, he said, pointing to the leathery blue ball perched on his shoulder. We couldn't keep Lando Calrissian waiting, Anja said gruffly and patiently, though she wasn't the least bit eager to go. A rich chuckle came from the doorway. No, it doesn't pay to keep me waiting, unless, of course, you're a beautiful young lady. Anja turned to look at the speaker and saw in the arched doorway a dashingly handsome man with dark features and a dazzling white smile. Well, hello. What have we here? The young man said, striding into the room. Two beautiful young ladies. He took Anja's hand, bowed, and kissed it slightly. It's a pleasure to meet you. He held his hand and favored her with a brilliant smile. She sucked in a quick breath. This man was too smooth and handsome for his own good, and she wasn't all pleased that she felt a slight flush of pleasure from the center of his attention. From the corner of his eye, he saw Jaina clap a hand over her mouth to suppress a giggle. Lando Calrissian, this is Anja Galandro, Jason said, flushing as well. Anja, meet Lando Calrissian, one of my father's oldest and best friends. Lando used to be a pretty big gambler, and he's a former smuggler, too. At these words, Anja stiffened and snatched her hand from Lando Calrissian's group. Her gaze turned frosty, and her lip curled back in an involuntary sneer. What a shame. I kind of like smugglers, but I always found people who call themselves former smugglers are usually sort of self-righteous. Rather than being offended as Anja had hoped, Lando Calrissian raised his eyebrows if he found her statement interesting. Well, we'll just have to see if we can correct that impression, he said. I'll wait for you three down in the Lady Luck. Others are already there. He gave an enigmatic nod and left the room with a swirl of his cape. As Anja turned back toward the twins, she saw disapproval from Jaina's briny brown eyes. That was pretty rude. Anja blinked at her and feigned innocence. Oh, really, was it? Tension crackled in the air between them until Jaina and Jason intervened. Lando's kind of been like an uncle to us since we were born. He's risked his life more than once for every member of our family. I know it's hard for you to trust people, Anja, but Lando's one of the best. Give him a chance. Jaina pointed out, after all, he was nice enough to invite you along to Bespin, even though he doesn't know you. Anja nodded and tension broke. Sure, I'll give him a chance. Yeah, just try to relax. And try not to insult anyone, Jason added. Jaina grinned a lopsided grin that made her look like her father, Han Solo. Fortunately for you, Lando Calrissian doesn't insult too easily. Jaina nodded to Lando from the cockpit's position in the Lady Luck. Ready to jump for hyperspace. Hang on, everybody, Lando said. He flipped on a few switches and dazzling lights outside in front of the viewport switch stretched into brilliant star lines around them. Too bad we couldn't have brought the rack dragon, Jaina said. Or the lightning rod, Zeke spoke up from behind her in the crew cabin. Loie gave a non-committal rumble. Come on now, Lando said. We don't need to bring a whole fleet. It was unnecessary, Tenelcog agreed. Indeed, and the Lady Luck is quite a fine ship, EMTD said. Anyway, and she's big enough for a crew twice this size. Anyhow, I promised your families and Luke that I'd keep an eye on all of you. You know, not let anything happen. How could I do that if you were off on some other ship? Lando turned his most charming smile to Jaina. Besides, don't tell me it's a hardship to bring your practice your co-piloting skills in Lady Luck. Jaina laughed. No, I enjoy flying more than I could possibly enjoy any ride in your new amusement park, and you know it. Lando's face shone with childish excitement. I don't know about that. My Sky Center Galleria is fantastic. I can't wait to show it to you. My friend Kojin and I are sparing no expense in making it the best entertainment complex in the galaxy. If you can't find anything to enjoy in our Galleria, you're probably dead. Kojin's putting everything into it. He spends every waking hour there. He takes his wife and daughters with him at least once a week just to show them its progress. And you said he's a former smuggler? Anja said from the back of the cockpit. I suppose that means he's respectable, too. He had a pretty rough time of it up until the last few years, but things have really turned out for him. This is his biggest break. I'll tell you, since we've started working on his new project, I've never seen him so happy. He grinned over his shoulder. You'll like him. He's a nice guy, like me. The white metropolis was like an island in the sky, with towers and turrets of transparent steel windows that gleamed in the light of Bespin's brilliant sun. All around them, from soup of clouds, swirled in rainbows of pinks and oranges from air-browned microalgae and plankton that lived in the winds. A flurry of tiny ships circled like moths around the lights of the docking bays. Dazzling, Zeke said. I never get tired of looking at her, Lando said quietly. Loie gave an enthusiastic rumble as the Lady Luck touched down on a landing platform on the outskirts of Cloud City. Goodness, yes, EMT agreed. It's rather high, isn't it? Cloud City's altitude suited Loie just fine. Being so high reminded him of the great Rusher trees on his home planet of Kashyyyk. It gave him a feeling of home and safety. He was almost always comfortable when he was up high, and the young Wookiee couldn't wait to get out and explore. Maybe just climb some of the highest towers or hang out on some of the external hover scaffolding. With EMTD chirped firmly in his siren fiber belt, Loie was the first to bound down the Lady Luck's landing ramp. Eager to see the view, Loie strode into the edge of the landing platform to get a better look at the layered clouds below. Aside from the floating cities, Tabana gas refineries, and storage tanks that drifted in Bespin's atmosphere, the planet had no habitable land masses. The view was exhilarating, and Loie gave a contented sigh. It was so high up. His friends from the Jedi Academy joined him. Ah, Telka said. Ah, an interesting sensation. Zeke said, Whoa, I thought the trees you liked to climb were high. He gave Loie an admiring look and stepped back from the edge of the platform. I sure wouldn't want to fall. Hey, they've got some neat indigenous animals, Jason said, pointing at a flock of small creatures flying below them in the clouds. Bespin's life form is different from any place in the galaxy. Anna seemed completely at ease with the height and moved up close beside Loie at the edge of the platform, standing with one hand cocked on her hip. Nice view, she commented. As Lando and Jane emerged after shutting down the Lady Luck systems, a small and somber group of Edeks, city officials, marched across the docking platform of the space yacht. At first, Loy thought it might be a small committee to welcome home the former Baron Administrator of Cloud City, but he could sense immediately that something was wrong. Lando raised a hand in greeting. Good to be back. How you doing? He looked at him perplexed. This is all the fanfare you could manage? But the tiny group of officials converged around Lando and all began speaking at once in hushed voices. What? Wait a minute. One at a time. Loey, hearing Lando's voice rise in alarm, moved closer so he could hear. The sensitive Wookiee ears picked up the words, and he froze as one of the female officers spoke in a low, firm voice. It's true, sir. I saw him fall. The Winjin guard has ruled it a suicide. Your partner Kojan is dead.